Hi, everyone, and welcome to The Thriving Marriage. We're here Facebook Live with Mark Johnston, our head marriage coach here at High Thrive Coaching. And if you don't know me, I'm Heather Cho, and I am our mindset coach. So today we're going to be talking about our 60-second plan to reconnect with your spouse. I know this is a really hot topic for a lot of you. A lot of you feel like your spouses are pulling away from the marriage. They may be checked out of the marriage. You may just feel like there's a lot of distance or barriers between you and your spouse. So this month, Mark and I are going to going deep into this whole idea of reconnecting with your spouse, even if they don't want to work on the marriage or you have other obstacles kind of coming up in the way. So, Mark, if you're okay, I'm going to dive in first. We usually kind of turn it over to you. But Mark and I have some really powerful techniques, a 60-second plan on how to reconnect. And that goes all into the how to reconnect, how to establish connection, how to make the marriage healthy and safe again, things that you can do to draw your spouse back to you. And earlier in the month, we talked about several other issues with this. We talked about what not to do, right? The 3 unconventional truths to reconnect with your spouse. And I can see a couple of you are watching, so go ahead and give us a thumbs up if you can hear us. And here is my quiz for you. If you can remember the 4-word mantra that we had last time we talked, put that in the comments, and I might just have a surprise for anyone who gets it right. So we had a 4-word mantra of what not to do, what to avoid when you're trying to reconnect with your spouse. So if you remember what that is, then leave it in the comments, and we might just have a special surprise for you if you're doing your homework, putting on my coaching hat and seeing who's paying attention. So before we dive into a little bit more of the how, I really want to take a step back as the mindset coach here for you all and have us check in with why we really want to reconnect with our spouse. And I was just listening to Tony Robbins this morning. And so thanks to Tony for this inspiration. He was talking about how 80% of the work that we do comes from the why, and then 20% comes from the how. And I thought that was a really beautiful illustration of what I know is true, and what Mark and I have absolutely seen is true, is that you really need to know why you want to reconnect. What is that driving, motivating factor? So for everyone watching, thanks for the thumbs up. I would just want you to check in. Why do you really want to reconnect with your spouse? What does that really mean for you? What kind of feeling would it give you to have your spouse back in your life, to have that happy, healthy, thriving marriage that you really want? Okay, because we can give you all the tools and techniques and tips and practices in the world, but none of that's going to really matter if you don't have that really solid, why am I doing this? Why is it important to me? So just take a minute and check in with yourself on what that really means, why you really want to do that. So like I was mentioning, Mark, you and I have seen that when people have a very clear and definite why, they make massive strides forward, right? However, when they're lacking in knowing why they're even doing what they're doing or what they even really want, they tend to flounder a bit. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that's why it's really important to check in with, why do you want this? And that why has to become so strong that you feel like you're being pulled toward it, right? There's the difference between pushing yourself to do something, pushing yourself to have motivation to change, versus it's calling to you, you're hungry for it, you're connected with it on that soul level, and you want this thing so much that you're willing to do whatever it takes to get there. Okay, so we'll give you the path to get there. We'll show you the exact steps you need to get there, but you have to be the one putting that fuel, the fuel into the engine. We provide the engine that gets you there, but you got to put that fuel in. So if you're brave and you want to share with us why you really want to reconnect with your spouse, go ahead and leave that in the comments, and we'll see how you're doing with that.
I do want to illustrate this, not how it actually works within a relationship. What we see happening a lot of times is, as things get worse and worse within a marriage, that why to interact and why to have time together and why to really try for the relationship tends to die off a little bit. The reason is that why, you start looking at the relationship and you say, well, why would I go out on a date with my husband or wife if it's uncomfortable? Or why would I go out of my way to, do this favor for them because they didn't do anything for me? And so we start seeing that why has a inverse effect as well. If there's a negative why, people tend to pull further apart. Similarly, if I'm looking at a situation and I'm, looking forward to spending time with my wife, because I know that it feels good, and because I feel connected with her, and because I know that doing those things are going to result in something great, then I have all the more motivation to really work hard to make a date special, or to help my wife out so her stress is down, and so we can enjoy some time together.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a very good distinction. Thank you. So I hope you all have your why. And that's something that you have to dig deep into yourself. And sometimes you have to get past some of those surface level issues that might be going on. Maybe it is uncomfortable for you to go on a date or whatever, but deep in your heart is craving that connection that maybe you used to have with your spouse. Or maybe you are really wanting to set a good example for your children, and you don't want to break their hearts. You don't want to break up the family. You want to have a happy and healthy home environment. So really connect to that deeper level drive and desire that you have. Don't ignore it, and don't just, fluff it off because things are hard right now. We can make things easier, but we have to know why we want what we want. So that's the first place to start. So that makes sense? Let me know. Otherwise, we're going to go ahead and dive right on in here into our 60-second plan to reconnect with your spouse. And this is, we're just going to share 2 tips today, and then give you the resource on how you can get the rest of our 60-second plan. But Mark, the very first step that we always say when one person is pulling away from the marriage, which is very painful and very scary and frightening for someone who wants to stay in the relationship and wants things to work, is to create positive experience. Mm-hmm. So what does that really mean? What does that look like? And we'll go from there. So why is it so important to create positive experiences first before we do anything else in our reconnecting with our spouse?
Well, I pulled this tip from multiple different sources, but the main one that inspired me was Dr. John Gottman. So Gottman's like a big name within marriage, and he has this idea that marriages are stable, that they'll stay together as long as there's at least 5 positive interactions for every negative interaction. Now, what ends up happening is, as people start pulling apart, it becomes easier to negatively interpret what's going on. So, maybe your wife didn't say goodbye to you as she left for work in the morning, and you start examining that action and wondering, okay, does she not care about me? Or all these negative things start running through your mind. And what ends up happening is the tension starts to rise, the stress starts to rise, and the disconnection gets bigger and bigger. And so the big reason why we say, okay, we got to create some positive experiences, is we really need to lower all these things down. We need to lower the tension, lower the negativity. We need to lower all that disconnection, because otherwise it's absolutely next to impossible to work on other problems. For instance, if let's say that you and your spouse, that you just had this big fight and there's all this tension, and then they come to you and they want to solve the problem about dishes or something like that. It's going to blow up. That situation is not going to work well because of all the tension there. It's just, you can't solve problems if you don't feel good around each other. The thing is, a lot of that solving problems and coming closer together, it's just works so much smoother if you actually enjoy, if you're comfortable around each other. And this is really why this is like the first step. So when we're talking about a 60-second plan, okay, so in 60 seconds, what can you do to create some more positive experiences? Simply by, adding in compliments, adding in affirmative statements throughout your conversation. explaining how things are going well, or or just throwing in some little positive moments here and there is really all it takes throughout the day to really get things turning around.
Absolutely. So reducing that tension is so crucial. Otherwise, you're fighting fire with fire. One of the biggest mistakes, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, but it's important to touch on this again, is that this is not a good time to go deep into those problems, right? Which is what a lot of traditional therapy kind of pushes you to do. And you may even feel like you want to do because you want to solve those problems. However, the relationship isn't steady enough. It isn't healthy enough yet to really tackle those big issues until you have a measure of comfortability. Is that a word?
Comfort, I think is the word.
Of comfort between you and your spouse. So when we see that people are working to reduce that tension and have these positive experiences, your spouse is actually going to want to be around you. And isn't that a good thing? Like, you want your spouse to want to be around you, rather than everything being tense, everything being like a massive, we have to fix this problem, we have to solve this problem, which is only going to push them further away. They're actually going to want to be around you or feel safe to be around you again. And that's going to open up the doors of communication. So
I want to give one more caveat here, and that's that when there's enough pain within a relationship, enough lack of trust, this isn't going to work. Having this as the first step. There are certain circumstances where other steps need to come first, and other problems need to address before it even allows for some measure of comfort. And so we always tell people that every situation is different, every couple is different, but in general, this is a good first step for most people.
Absolutely. And I appreciate Jenna. Thank you for your comment. I appreciate that as well. So here are 2 questions that you can ask yourself. And again, this just takes 60 seconds to think about this and create a plan on what you can do specifically to increase the positive experiences in your relationship. So the first one is this. I'm putting it up here on the screen. What would my spouse feel comfortable with at this point? Because like Mark just said, not every relationship is at the same place. In my relationship, it would be great if Ben brought me flowers and took me out to a romantic dinner. But for other people, that is absolutely going to backfire and be one of the worst things that you could do. So understanding exactly where you and your spouse are actually at and staying within that realm of what is comfortable for your spouse at this time is going to be really important. So that's the first question. What would my spouse feel comfortable with at this point? And then, what would they really appreciate at this point? So what would they be comfortable with, and what would really speak to them in a positive light? So you can take 60 seconds to just think about that, sink into that, and then get some ideas going. And we want you to implement them today, like now. So make a commitment that you're going to do it. And notice what kind of positive shift happens in your relationship when you speak at the comfort level where your spouse is at and something that they appreciate.
So I do want to add on to the question of what would they appreciate. What I'll suggest there is, when there are problems, it's usually because one partner or another is really needing something, either needing more connection, needing to feel more important, needing to feel valued, needing to feel more security or certain about things. I would start with those things. Now, if you're already fairly healthy, then at that point the focus tends to shift a little bit, and I would focus in on I know a lot of people are familiar with the 5 love languages. So if you are familiar with your partner's love language, I would go there as far as what would they appreciate.
Absolutely. All right, cool. If you guys have any questions about this at any time, go ahead and leave us a comment. We know that there are specific challenges and situations that you might be facing that we need to go a little bit deeper in. And so we're happy to do that with you. So Mark, our second point here of what to do to reconnect with your spouse, that one is to stop the damage. Yeah. Stop the damage. So what do we mean by that? When we're working with couples and one of the spouse is really pulling away, We encourage them to build up these positive interactions. And then second, stop the damage. Tell us a little bit more about what that looks like.
Yeah, and this goes back to Dr. Gottman's 5-to-1 ratio. I mean, if you're having all this damage going on, every time that you interact with your spouse, if it's negative, it's going to pull you further and further apart. Now, the thing that we've seen, as long as we've been working with couples, is that once it gets to a certain point, even certain positive actions might actually be damaging. For instance, once one spouse says that, hey, they're done, they want out of the marriage, it tends to do more damage to throw in all these romantic actions, to buy them flowers, to try to snuggle up close to them, to try to kiss them, to try to hold their hands. It ends up doing damage, because in those cases, what those actions are communicating is that you're not respecting or listening to what their own desires, what they want done. Now, there's other ways around that. There's ways to still connect with them, even despite someone saying that they want out of the marriage. But absolutely, we got to cut out anything that's damaging. So if there's a lot of fights, a lot of yelling, a lot of name calling, that absolutely has to be cut out. If there's a lot of disrespect, if there's carelessness, sloppiness, and that really bothers someone, those things need to be cut out, because once again, it goes back to that ratio. Do you have more positive experiences together or negative? And if you have too many negative experiences, it pulls you further and further apart.
Absolutely. And going back to the what is your spouse comfortable with, what might seem damaging to you or to your spouse is different for each person. So that's why it's really important to understand. I'll just do a little case study here with one of our clients. For instance, Mark was alluding to this earlier, but he was sending his wife a text message every single day. They were currently separated, to let her know that he cared about her. And he felt like this was how he could show that he was still committed to the relationship. He wasn't going to give up. So to him, in his mind, this was a measure of healthy, good communication in the relationship. And in other circumstances, it very well may be. In a healthy relationship, absolutely. Getting a text from your spouse, not a big deal. It's a really positive thing. However, in this situation, it made her very uncomfortable. And she had asked him repeatedly to stop texting her every single day. But part of his fear and his clench mode holding on to the relationship was that he had a really hard time letting go of texting her every single day. But we asked him, what do you really want here? Do you recognize that, put yourself in your spouse's shoes? And if you show her that you are willing to listen to what she really wants and really needs at this time, isn't that going to get you going so much further in the relationship, right? And it's a simple thing. It's texting. We wouldn't think that that would be such like a big dividing gap, but however, in this situation, it was. So being really sensitive to what your spouse's needs are, what they're attempting to communicate to you. You may not see it as damaging, but if you're getting clues from them that it is, then you might want to assess what's going on there and find a different way to show them that you care, a different way to show them that you are committed to the relationship by respecting their needs. Would you agree, Mark?
Absolutely. That's perfect, Heather.
Awesome. Now we have a couple phrases here to help reduce some of that tension, because I know that is easier said than done, because we can't just simply stop doing something without putting something positive in its place, right? The universe abhors a vacuum. Nature abhors a vacuum. So rather than just saying simply, just stop doing that, if it was that easy, we would all just never eat sugar or have any bad habits ever, right? We want to include some positive things to put in the place there to build that positive interaction, make things comfortable and safe. So one of the first things when things start to get tense between you and your spouse, we have a couple little phrases here that you can use. And we want you to try these the next time things get tense. So the first one is, oh no, that's not it. That's my old one. I didn't copy. There we go. Okay. It's, you seem really upset about this. Okay. So this phrase right here, you seem really upset about this, is showing them understanding. It's showing them awareness of, that you understand what they're going through. But note that you're not necessarily making an agreement with them. This removes all of the defensiveness and the attack mode, right? If you have ever been in that kind of situation, I'm sure we all have, that this right here says, you seem really upset about this. That really helps to lower the tension immediately. Mark, any other thing to add on to that?
Yeah. I mean, what that phrase is really communicating is like, hey, you're noticing what this is doing to the other person. And if you think about it, when someone's upset, what is it that they're looking for? They're usually looking for understanding, and they're looking for a way to solve the problem that is making them upset. So even just opening the discussion up like this, just acknowledging what's going on is going to get it going in a good direction.
Absolutely. Then the next one, if I can get it to work right with all my buttons and copying and pasting here. I just like to show it on the screen. I don't know why. Maybe no one else thinks that's cool, but I think it's cool.
That's good.
That way you can, if you're a visual person like me, then you can see it. But I understand why you feel that way. I understand why you feel that way. Again, most times what we're seeking from other people is simply understanding. How good does it feel to you when someone understands you? Even if they don't agree with you, if they can understand where you're coming from and how you're feeling about something, that is one of the best feelings in the world, right? So give that gift of understanding to your spouse, to your partner. You're not saying I necessarily agree with you or that you're right, because it takes all the rightness and wrongness out of the situation completely. But I understand why you feel that way. Mark, over to you.
Yeah, I want to just kind of play out that sequence there. Imagine your spouse is fuming and they're just laying into you, or even if you yourself are getting really upset because you've been offended, and someone just takes the moment and say, you know what, that's understandable why you're so upset. It's really going to take that all that animosity right out of that situation. I mean, if we look at it, when we see someone who's really sad, when they're crying, what's our natural reaction? We go to them and we ask them what's wrong. We want to try to understand why they're so sad. And really, it's a very similar thing when someone's mad or angry as well. They're looking to be understood and have some sort of validation in their feelings before they can really move on.
Absolutely. So that's going to bring us then to our very last question here. After we reduce some of that tension and you feel like, whew, okay, we're back into a safer place, we're starting to have some connection through this understanding, the next most beautiful question to ask is, what can we do to solve this together? What can we do about this? Okay, I understand you're upset. I understand why you feel that way. What can we do to solve this together? Mark, why is this one of the most powerful questions a couple can ask?
Well, first off, I want to point out the language is important. The specific words are important here. It's what can we do to solve this, or just to solve this together. What happens during fights? What happens when tensions rise, when defenses go up? It turns into you versus them. Someone's right, someone's wrong. You're on opposite teams. And just by offering the understanding and opening the discussion up, and then using that specific language, like, hey, what can we do about this? Your words are implying being on the same team, that you are working together to solve whatever's going on. And it's really going to change the dynamic of that situation from, a confrontation, a battle, to cooperation.
Absolutely. So we want you to take action on these and to even report back to us how it goes. Notice the shift in your relationship, even within the next 24 hours, as you first build some positive interactions. Remember, what is your spouse going to be comfortable with? What will they appreciate? And then second, next time the tensions arise, use these three phrases and just notice how the tension will lower, and you will start to really build some deep connection between you and your spouse. These things aren't going to happen overnight, but given enough time and effort, moving in the right direction with these positive experiences, these positive interactions, you can absolutely reconnect with your spouse and have that happy, healthy, and thriving marriage that you want. So these are just 2 of the 8 different steps that we have. 60-second plan to reconnect with your spouse. Mark, do you have any final words of advice? And I will drop the link here while we wrap things up on exactly where you can get the rest of these 8 steps, our 60-second plan to reconnect with your spouse.
Yeah, what I just want to say is, as helpful as some of these steps are, and as good as it can be to help reduce tension, like we mentioned earlier, every situation is going to be different and needs a little bit of a different application. And I find that a lot of times just some helpful feedback does some wonders for turning things around. That's exactly what Heather and I are here for. We encourage people to reach out to us and ask us questions and see what we can do to help out their situation. Whether you're really healthy and you just want to have an even better marriage, or whether you're on the brink of disaster and you're looking for some way to salvage what's left, we can help you with that. That's exactly what we're here for.
Absolutely. So again, going back to the beginning, tap into that why. Why do you really want to reconnect with your spouse? What does that happy, healthy marriage really look like? What does it mean to you, and how good will it feel to have it? Because it can absolutely be yours. We're seeing tremendous progress, again, with this engine, this specific step-by-step process that we have that works to reconnect spouses, even when one might be pulling away from the marriage. And we want the same for you. We want you to have that happy and healthy, thriving marriage. So here is the link. See, it's relationshiprebootcourse.com/60 seconds. So it's just a 60-second plan. It's a free PDF, and it's got a ton of really, really great, useful, practical, tactile information that you can go, and these practical exercises that we want you to go and implement them into your marriage today, so that you can see that this absolutely works and that you can do it. So thank you everyone for watching, and thank you, Mark, for sharing such wonderful insights with us. And as always, we wish you a happy, thriving marriage. All right, we will talk to you next time.
Bye.